Chapter 13, Shifting Loyalties and Sweet Revenge. Boxer was transported back to the Palm Hall Maximum Security Unit at California Institute for Men in Chino and once again landed in the thick of MA prison politics, now ready to settle few scores of his own. A number of brothers wanted to assassinate Daniel Cuate Grajeda of La Rana, a 38-year-old black-hearted manipulative murderer who was a self-professed fanatic about his membership in the Mexican Mafia. It's as if MA were his religion, observed Boxer. Cuate actually prayed to Aztec gods. Mictlantecuhtli, the lord of death, Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, and the sun god Tanitwa. My Aztec is rusty. He spoke the ancient language of Nahuatl and truly believed he was a warrior. Cuate was 6 feet tall, muscular, and so dark-skinned that brothers jokingly referred to him as Coco, after a gorilla that was the subject of a frontline television documentary on the communication of apes. He had the Mafia black hand tattooed inside his left bicep with a circle around it and an arrow penetrating the perimeter, a nasty scar where someone slashed him with a steak knife across his left cheek, and a 14-inch X that he carved into his own chest. Boxer knew that Cuate was a violent, aggressive, unpredictable man not to be taken lightly. Black Dan Barella and Betsy Segato, both housed at Palm Hall, gave Boxer a yes vote in regard to whacking Cuate, who was locked up in Los Angeles County Jail. Cuate had angered other carnales because he literally tried to take over operations at County, claiming he had Godfather Joe Morgan's blessing to do so. On top of that, Boxer said Cuate formulated a plan to set up an elite MA leadership group called Les Mejores, the best, including Morgan and brothers he designated as worthy. Those carnales deemed non-productive would be eliminated. Furthermore, Cuate took it upon himself to order MA member Henry Indio Carlos of El Sereno to hit another carnal in the jail. Cuate threatened him with the words, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in Spanish, but in English, it means, if you don't do it, the sky will fall. Boxer said Indio felt disrespected and refused. He complained that Cuate was no more than equal in status and had no right to be giving orders. He figured if Cuate Grajeda wanted someone dead, he should do it himself, or at least be part of the hit team. Also, a year earlier, Cuate had stabbed and killed MA member Rosario Chango Ramirez of Florencia in the visiting room at Men's Central Jail. He stabbed Chango 23 times with a sharpened butter knife. Dying in the pool of his blood, as a last act of defiance, Chango lifted his hand and gave a final salute with his middle finger. He was no Boy Scout, but other brothers felt that Cuate had done the hit on his own, merely to grab another criminal case that would keep him in the county lockup, where he was making a lot of money selling drugs. Finally, on September 16, 1989, Cuate was just finishing up a noontime shower down in his B-roll cell in the 1700 section of High Power Gang Module. Finally, on September 16, 1989, Cuate, just finishing up a noontime shower down from his B-roll cell in the 1700 section of High Power Gang. Finally, on September 16, 1989, Cuate was just finishing up a noontime shower down from his B-roll cell in the 1700 section of the High Power Gang Module. He was bald on top and grew his hair 6 inches long on one side. Always, his last act of grooming was to comb the hanging mane over his bare pate and create a comb-over hairdo that was always guaranteed a good-natured ribbing from other carnales. It was about at that same time when Indio Carlos signaled a deputy in the control booth to open the gate on A-roll so he could push out some food trays as part of his duties as a trustee. As the gate opened, he ran straight for Cuate in the shower and stabbed him. Cuate was caught naked, holding only a towel, which he balled up and threw at his attacker. He slipped on the wet floor and fell, coiled in the defensive fetal position, and tried to fend off the blows as the metal shank repeatedly plunged into his chest, back, and neck. Blood flowed down the drain in a scene reminiscent of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Indio was determined to keep stabbing Grajeda until he was dead and planned to attack any deputy who tried to interfere. Inexplicably, Indio backed off as Deputy Gray Frazier responded to the ruckus, but ignored orders to stop the shank. Only when he got back to A-Roll did he throw it down and almost himself to be handcuffed. Later that day, Senior Deputy Patrick walked into a holding cell where Indio was being temporarily kept, and the mafioso spontaneously said, "It's one of those things. It's a cruel world." Deputy Frazier, 5 days later, was escorting Carlos when the inmate initiated the following conversation. "Deputy Frazier, the other day, were you going to rush in and break it up?" "Yes," he answered, "until I saw what was going on. Then I stopped. I saw it was you," Carlos continued, "so I backed off. If it had been someone else, I don't know. You've been down working in high power for a while, and you know me, and I know you. You know what I'm talking about." "Yes, I do," replied the deputy. "There is an unspoken code of conduct, even among the worst of MA inmates." Boxer explained, "It's an understanding that there is no reason to mistreat guards who don't mistreat you. It's sort of a go-along, get-along philosophy." Guate had been politicking on Indio, so Indio decided to whack him before Grajeda had a chance to close the lid on him. Besides, he knew Guate was already on the lista. "Carlos didn't do anything wrong," explained Boxer. "He did what he was supposed to do as a carnal. His only mistake was leaving Grajeda alive, which added to his almost mythical ability to survive mafia politics. Guate Grajeda was not an easy man to kill." The Palm Hall political plots thickened, and it was fairly easy to use the prison system to help the mafia get it done. Arch enemy Bevito Alvarez, fallen out of the graces of La M because of his politicking against other brothers, was still in the hat. Boxer was housed in Palm Hall with Ruben Tupi Hernandez and Ronald Turtle Paisa of Ontario Black Angels and Vivesi Vesi Sagado of 18th Street, all mafia members. La M's Freddy Veneno Gonzalez of Pomona 12th Street, accused of murdering a Nuestra Familia rival at the California Rehabilitation Center, CRC, was on trial for the murder in Riverside, a half-hour drive from the Chino prison site. He had his lawyers subpoena Bevito at prison in Tehachapi to come down to Chino and serve as a character witness in the case. Boxer pointed out it was all a ruse to set up the murder of Bevito and force the state to pay for it. Boxer, Vessi, and Tupi were also subpoenaed as witnesses in the case. The assassins were equipped with a knife, a garrote, and a handcuff key. The first plan was to murder Bevito in the bus when they were all transported to court. Alvarez asked Boxer and Vessi, both on the same tier at Palm Hall, if they knew why he was going to court. They played dumb, and Bevito felt there was something wrong. The tier tender, an old prison buddy named Doc, walked by his cell and said, "Hey, Ray Ray, Wild Wild West." Bevito really didn't get what he was trying to tell him, but it added to his suspicion. Then, the night before court, the same friendly face came by his cell again and warned, "Ray, you don't know what's going on? You don't know what's happening here? Ray, they're going to kill you." The next day, there were 4 different police agencies there for the transport to court and a helicopter flying overhead. Boxer and Vessi were placed together on the bus. Tupi went in a separate car, and so did the target, Bevito. As the convict caravan headed out the prison gates, cops were stationed around with guns at the ready. Officers were blocking traffic at intersections and running red lights. Boxer remembered, it was like out of the movies. Headed east for 10 minutes down the 60 freeway, suddenly the cars turned down an exit ramp and then headed west on the 60 back to the prison. Conspirators and their prey were locked down again and were only told that court was postponed. Boxer and Tupi were forced to go to a backup plan, hit Bevito the next day on the yard instead. 3 mafia associates were assigned to smuggle the weapons out to the yard in their rectums. It's called keystering. They had big, double-edged, razor-sharp steel knives called bone crushers that were 6 to 8 inches long and 1.5 inches wide. The handles were wrapped with strips of bed sheets. Boxer explained how it's done. First, the knife is wrapped in toilet paper to make it softer or more cushion-like. Then, on top of that, the knife is covered with saran wrap taken from the prison sandwiches. The whole thing is then covered with the lubricant, some lotion or Vaseline. The inmate then greases his insides with the same lubricant, called greasing the tracks or hooping, as in dunking a baseball in the hoop. The knife is gently inserted in the rectum. The first time that I did it, it felt like I had a broomstick up to my neck. It's excruciating with enormous pressure on your intestinal tract. Over time, it gets easier to do, and I was eventually able to sleep or even exercise with the shank secreted in my bowels. On the yard, you push as if defecating to release the knife. Reach back inside your pants, grab the shank, pull off the wrapping and stab. The 3 mob associates designated to bring the bone crushers out to the yard for the Bevito hit had to insert them while in the shower and pull them out with armed guards watching close by. Nerve-wracking for them. It wasn't easy. Boxer and Thupi decided they would each go for a couple of kill shots, deep penetrating blows, then lie down. This was a yard for high-risk gangsters, and correctional officers would open fire with their Heckler and Koch 9mm assault rifles loaded with Glazer rounds. As soon as they spotted violence, if they stabbed him right, Bevito would bleed out on the pavement before anyone could get him to the medical aid. It didn't matter much for Thupi. He was already serving 3 life terms for killing a small-time drug dealer named Mary Lou Davila and her 2 innocent bystanders, Maria Malords, who rented a room for... motherfucker. It didn't matter much for Thupi. He was already serving 3 life terms for killing a small-time drug dealer named Mary Lou Davila and 2 innocent bystanders, Maria Malords, who rented a room at Davila's house, and her fiancé Pancho Ortiz. Thupi tied them up, hands and feet, and shot them in the head execution style. Davila died because she had paid $10,000 for the death of a Mexican mafia associate who was shaking her down for drugs. The young couple, returning home from a night out, was killed so there would be no witnesses. Thupi was amused in court when prosecutors said they would not seek the death penalty. A relative of the young, murdered couple, who does not want to be identified, said he looked at us directly in the face and laughed at us. He thought it was a big game. He looked at us straight in the eye and laughed. Now, Boxer was ready to roll. He hated Bevito for giving him such a hard time when he was a new mafia soldado at Folsom and Tehachapi. Revenge was going to be swift and sweet. He was amped up on adrenaline, butterflies in his stomach. He always disliked the waiting and wanted it to be done. He didn't smoke any cigarettes to keep his hands from shaking, the usual ritual for him. 15 minutes went by and no Bevito. Half hour went by and still no Bevito. Everyone returned to their cells after yard and Bevito was gone. What the hell was going on? What the mafia didn't count on was Lieutenant Leo Duarte, a gang-savvy officer who had an honest rapport with Palm Hall crooks. Boxer saw him on the tier later that same afternoon. Did Bevito lock it up? Yeah, answered Duarte. He's done, Rene. You aren't going to get him. We know what's going on. The lieutenant, according to Boxer, was nobody's fool. Duarte had a certain fascination with prison gangs, made it his business to learn about them, and was always respectful, but at the same time wary, perceptive, and tenacious. He found out about the murder plot when he intercepted a kite sent by Thupi. Duarte warned Bevito the day before the planned hit, and the targeted mafioso chose to go into protective custody. He knew death was waiting for him on the yard, and he could no longer fight it and win. The politicking days in the mafia for Raimundo Bevito Alvarez were over. He dropped out of La M and beefed authorities on what he knew. He was in fact done. Boxer Enriquez still felt a sense of satisfaction. I wanted to kill him, but seeing him squirm was good enough. Bevito looked nervous when I saw him on the tier. He approached me in a fake brotherly fashion, and I knew it. He looked like I felt at Folsom when he politicked against me and placed me on his hit list. He was scared. I saw it in his eyes. I enjoyed that because I finally saw this guy squirm. He knew we were going to do him, and that was good enough for me. Finally, the shoe was on the other foot. It doesn't feel fun when the rabbits got the gun. Boxer felt he had won an important mafia political battle for survival. It showed me I could prevail in the organization, that I had the political savvy and the knack for survival against MA Titans. 10 days later, Enriquez was transferred to the maximum security SHU unit at Corcoran State Prison to serve out the remainder of his parole violation. There, he ran into Sinon Chorrillo Grajeda. Boxer liked Chorrillo, a slightly chubby guy who had an outgoing personality, frequently cracking jokes, and they got along well together. He never saw Chorrillo get angry or bullying camaradas, and Chorrillo was loyal to the MA. Also, he was one of the brothers who helped school Enriquez at Folsom when he was a young recruit. There were 3 Grajedas in the mafia: Chorrillo, was 3 years younger than his twin brothers, Guate and Thomas, also known as Big Wino. They all had roots in a Long Beach, California gang called La Rana. There was a certain magnetism to the family name, and they carried a lot of weight. Daniel Grajeda, or Guate, was always caught up in some jam. Boxer had to explain to Chirrillo why the Carnales agreed to assault his older brother a month earlier at the LA County Jail. He accepted the explanation, but seemed hurt by the fact it was done. At the same time, Boxer remembered Chirrillo once told him, "I'll kill him, Guate, if I have to. If he done wrong, I'll kill him." It astounded Boxer that someone would actually kill his own brother or even talk about it, even though that was part of the Mafia code. But in the future, he would see that Chirrillo was first and foremost a Grajeda. Grajedas think they are walking gods. The truth is that everyone in the Mexican Mafia is expendable. During Boxer's last month at Corcoran, word came from the prison grapevine that Ernest Kilroy Roybal had been stabbed on the yard at the California Correctional Institution at Tehachapi. This meant Roybal was done in the mob and that Boxer had now prevailed over two powerful Mexican Mafia enemies, Kilroy Roybal and Bevito Alvarez. Ironically, the hitman was Sleepy Huerta, the professional, the same mafioso who killed Nico Velasquez at CCI at the direction of the Bevito Kilroy faction. Kilroy, after he was stabbed by Sleepy, began to fight, then backed off and took the hit. He was 50 years old at the time. Recovering from his wounds, he spent most of his last 4 years in the security housing unit at Pelican Bay State Prison, where Emmett hitmen couldn't get to him. Everyone said he was no good, recalled Boxer. Kilroy Roybal was released on parole in 1993 after serving 14 years for armed robbery and murder. And a month later, he became a born-again Christian. In a November 1997 Dispatch magazine article about his conversation entitled "Gunning for God," he said, "I lived and died for the MA. That is until the tables had turned. There are ever-shifting loyalties in the mob," explained Boxer. "It's Byzantine. One day I'm friends with a good mafia member. We do business together in an organization. The next day there's a powerful shift and the same brother is my adversary. He won't even say my name. He'll cut me loose. And if there's a vote to kill me, he'll vote yes. That's just how it goes." After nearly 6 more months in prison, on December 18, 1989, Boxer Enriquez was once again released to the streets on parole. It was time to meet up with his crew and get back to business of killing.